Humans had always been the kind of species that looked up. Even when Earth was still divided, even when wars burned cities and hunger touched millions, people still stared at the stars and whispered, "What's out there?" By the year 2347, the question was no longer a dream. Humanity had spread across 12 star systems. Some worlds were warm and green, others were cold, rocky, and cruel. But humans stayed anyway. They built homes under strange suns. They planted gardens in metal domes. They raised children who had never seen Earth's oceans. 40 billion lives scattered across the galaxy. And for a while, it felt like the universe had finally opened its arms. Until the Galactic Council spoke. Ambassador Lena Chin stood alone in the council's main chamber, a place so massive it felt like a cathedral built for giants. The ceiling vanished into shadow. The walls were dark metal that swallowed light. Platforms floated in the air like silent thrones. 17 alien species watched her. Some had eyes like polished stone. Some had no eyes at all. One looked like living glass. Another shifted like a slow storm trapped in a body. Lena forced herself not to shrink. She was 62 years old. She had negotiated pirate ceasefires and colony rebellions. She had talked angry generals down from launching nukes. But nothing prepared her for this room. At the highest platform stood High Arbiter Zolan, his body formed from sharp crystal shapes that glowed from within. When he spoke, his voice echoed as if the chamber itself was speaking. "Ambassador Chen of Earth," he said, "you have been summoned to receive the Council's decree." Lena's throat tightened. "I'm listening." Zolan's inner light pulsed. "For 300 years, we have observed your species. We watched you leave your home world. We watched you spread. We watched you grow." The word grow sounded like an accusation. Then Zolan continued, colder now. "Your population expands at a dangerous rate. Your technology advances too quickly. Your conflicts are constant. You are unstable." A clicking sound came from one of the platforms. The translator whispered the meaning into Lena's ear. "Like vermin, like insects." Lena kept her face calm, but inside something burned. Zolan raised one crystal arm. "The Council has decided. Humanity will surrender its outer colonies. You may keep your home system and 2 others. The remaining 9 systems will be placed under Council administration." Lena's heart dropped like a stone. 9 systems? Billions of people. Whole civilizations. Zolan did not stop. "Your fleets will be reduced. Your research will be monitored. You will accept protectorate status." Lena heard her own voice, quiet, sharp. "You're asking us to hand over everything we built." Zolan's glow brightened. "We are not asking. We are informing." A pause. Then the final blade. "You have one standard cycle to comply. If you refuse, humanity will be erased." Lena inhaled slowly. In that moment, she understood something terrifying. The Council didn't hate humans. They didn't even fear them. They simply believed humans were small enough to control. And Lena Chin realized she would rather die than carry that message home without a fight. But she still had to deliver it, because Earth needed to answer. And whatever that answer was, it would shake the galaxy. As Lena left the chamber, she passed close enough to hear one alien whisper through the translator. 30 days, then we crush them." Lena didn't look back, but her hands clenched into fists as if she already knew Earth's reply. The trip back to human space took 3 days. 3 days of silence, stars sliding past the shuttle window like cold, uncaring sparks. Ambassador Lena Chen sat alone in her cabin most of the time. She didn't sleep much. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the council chamber again, those floating platforms, those unreadable faces, and Zolan's voice saying, "erased," like it was nothing.
a whole species wiped out like a mistake. Her aide, Marcus Hale, knocked once and stepped inside. He was young, 28, with tired eyes and hands that never stopped moving. He'd grown up on the colony world of New Jakarta, one of the systems the Council wanted to take. His parents still lived there. His sister had just given birth there. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Ma'am," Marcus said softly, "Earth is waiting. The Secretary General called an emergency assembly. They want your report as soon as we land." Lena nodded without looking away from the stars. "Good." Marcus hesitated, then asked the question he'd been holding back. "How bad is it?" Lena turned her head. For a moment, she didn't answer. She saw fear in his face, the kind of fear that wasn't about death, but about losing a home, losing everything you worked for. "It's worse than people think," she finally said. Marcus swallowed. "So, we're going to surrender?" That word hit Lena like a slap. She stood slowly, her knees stiff, and walked toward the window. Earth's sun was still far away, but she could already feel its pull like a memory. "We are not dead yet, and we're not children, not anymore." Marcus looked confused, but he didn't argue. He left quietly. When Lena was alone again, she pressed her palm against the glass. The Council called humanity dangerous. Maybe they were right. Humans were dangerous, not because they wanted to conquer the galaxy, but because they refused to accept a cage, because they kept building even when the universe told them to stop, because they kept climbing even when their hands bled. Dangerous like fire, and the Council had spent 50,000 years trying to keep every spark under control. The shuttle entered Earth orbit at dawn. The planet below looked peaceful. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds curling like soft smoke. But orbit told a different story. Defense platforms floated like steel teeth around the world. Ship traffic moved in strict patterns. Every station blinked with warning lights. Humanity had been preparing for enemies for a long time, just not this one. The shuttle landed at the United Nations complex in Geneva, a place that had survived centuries of change. The building was newer now, reinforced, expanded, and surrounded by layers of security, but the heart of it was the same. Inside, Lena walked through long halls filled with rushing footsteps and whispered conversations. Officials tried to stop her. Journalists shouted questions. Security officers kept pushing everyone back. She said nothing. This news had to be delivered once, clearly, with no confusion. The assembly hall was packed. Representatives from Earth nations sat beside colony leaders from distant systems. Military commanders sat beside scientists. Cameras hovered like insects, broadcasting the moment to billions of screens across human space. At the center podium stood Secretary General Amara Okonkwo, tall, calm, and terrifyingly steady. She had led humanity through plagues, riots, and 2 near civil wars, but even she looked strained today, as if she had been holding her breath for hours. "Ambassador Chen," Amara said, voice carrying through the hall, "you have the floor." Lena stepped up. She looked out at the sea of human faces. Some were angry, some were hopeful, some were already broken with fear. She felt a tightness in her chest, not fear, responsibility. "The Council has issued an ultimatum," Lena said. Her voice was quiet, but the hall went dead silent. "You have 30 days to respond." And then she told them everything. The demand to surrender 9 systems, the demand to reduce the fleet, the demand to accept protectorate status, the threat of extinction if they refused. When she finished, there was no applause, no shouting, no movement at all. For 3 full seconds, the entire human species seemed frozen. Then the room exploded. People stood, yelling over each other. Some screamed that surrender was the only logical choice. Others shouted that they would rather die. A colony leader from Vega slammed his fist on his desk, so hard his microphone cracked. A representative from Mars was crying openly. Marcus Hale stood near the back wall, pale as paper, staring as if he could still hear the council's laughter. Amara raised one hand. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Enough. The room fell into a shaky silence. Amara looked across them all. "We have 30 days," she said. 30 days to decide if humanity kneels or stands. Lena felt her heart pounding because she could already sense the truth. Whatever choice they made, it would not be clean. That night, while Earth argued and the colonies panicked, General Elias Stone requested a private meeting with the Secretary General. His message was only 7 words long. "We have a way to fight back."
The first week after the ultimatum felt like the universe had tilted. Across Earth, crowds filled streets. Some carried banners that said, "Peace at any cost." Others carried signs that said, "We do not kneel." There were fights outside government buildings. People screamed at each other in markets, on trains, in schools. Families stopped speaking at dinner tables. Friends blocked each other on the nets. The same fear lived in everyone's chest, but it came out in different ways. On the colony worlds, the fear was sharper. Because the colonies were not just words in a treaty, they were homes. In New Jakarta, Marcus Hale's mother stood on her balcony and stared at the forest she had spent 20 years helping protect. She sent Marcus a video message with shaking hands. "We're not leaving," she said. "We built this. We buried people here. We planted trees here. If they want it, they can come take it." The message went viral. Millions of colonists watched it and felt something rise inside them. Not hope, not confidence, just stubborn, furious refusal. Militias formed in 3 systems by the end of the week. Veterans trained civilians. Farmers turned mining equipment into weapons. Even teenagers started learning how to operate emergency rifles because their parents said, "just in case." The politicians begged them to stay calm. The colonists laughed. Inside the United Nations Hall, the debates never stopped. Secretary General Amara Okonkwo kept the assembly in session for days at a time. People slept in chairs. Some didn't go home at all. The air smelled like stress and recycled oxygen. 2 factions rose quickly. The first called themselves the Survival Bloc. Their leader was Director Heinrich Voss, head of strategic intelligence. He was thin, sharp-faced, and spoke like a man who had already made peace with losing. When he took the podium, he didn't waste time. "Let's stop pretending," Voss said. "We cannot win a war against the Council." He displayed numbers across the hall. The Council's military force, millions of warships. Humanity's total fleet, just over 1,200 combat vessels. Some people in the room laughed bitterly because the numbers were too cruel to feel real. Voss didn't blink. "This is not a battle," he continued. "This is extinction with extra steps." He pointed to the outer systems. "Do you know what surrender means? It means losing territory. It means humiliation. It means the end of our pride." He leaned forward, eyes cold. "But it also means our children live." The room stayed silent. Voss's voice softened slightly. "Survival is not cowardice. The Council has existed for 50,000 years. No species has refused them in 30,000. The last one that tried is gone. Their planets are dust. Their language is dead." Then he looked directly at the colony representatives. "If you force this war, you won't be heroes. You'll be the generation that got humanity erased." Some people clapped. Others looked sick. Then the second faction rose. They called themselves the Defiance Coalition. Their leader was Senator Maria Santos, a woman with a strong voice and a scar on her jaw. Her family had lived on colony worlds for 3 generations. Her hands shook when she spoke.
not from fear, but from anger she was struggling to control. Director Voss talks about survival, but he's not describing survival. He's describing a slow death. She pulled up images. Children playing under alien skies, farms carved in red soil, cities built in the rings of gas giants. 9 systems, 20 billion people. These are not numbers, these are lives. Santos's eyes burned. The Council wants us to abandon our own, to accept chains, to become pets. She slammed her palm on the podium. And what happens after we surrender? They reduce our fleet. They monitor our science. They decide what we are allowed to become. You think they stop there? Silence. Santos lowered her voice. If we kneel once, we kneel forever. Then she said the words that hit every human heart like a drumbeat. I would rather die standing than live on my knees. Half the hall erupted in cheers. The other half looked terrified. Amara Okonkwo sat perfectly still, staring down at the table in front of her. Because both sides were right, and that was the worst part. But while humanity argued about whether to fight, no one asked the most important question: how? That changed on day 10. General Elias Stone walked into the hall, and he did not look like a man coming to surrender.
General Elias Stone did not look like a politician. He looked like a man who had spent his life sleeping in uniforms and waking up to alarms. His hair was gray and cut short. His shoulders were wide. His face was hard in a way that didn't come from anger. It came from years of responsibility. The kind of face that had watched people die and still had to keep giving orders. When he stepped to the podium, the room quieted without being asked. Even Director Voss sat back. Even Senator Santos stopped breathing. Stone looked out at them, one slow sweep of the eyes, as if he was counting every soul in the room. I've listened to your debate, he said. Director Voss is right about the numbers. Senator Santos is right about the stakes. He paused. But you're all planning the wrong kind of war. A murmur moved through the hall. Stone tapped the display panel. The images of fleets and ship counts disappeared. In their place appeared something unexpected. A timeline, human history. You're thinking like the Council, Stone said. Fleet against fleet. Line up, exchange fire, see who has more ships. He leaned forward slightly. If we fight that way, we die in a month. The room stayed silent. Stone continued, voice calm but cutting. Humans didn't become a space-faring species because we were the strongest animal on our planet. We weren't. We didn't become dominant because we were the fastest. We weren't. He pointed to the timeline. We became dominant because we adapt. Because when the world tells us we can't win, we stop playing fair. A few people laughed nervously, but Stone didn't smile. He changed the display again. Now it showed old battles, ambushes, guerrilla tactics, sabotage operations, resistance movements, the kind of wars history books called ugly. The Council hasn't fought a real war in 30,000 years, Stone said. They've crushed weaker species, they've burned planets, but they've never faced an enemy that refuses to fight by their rules. He turned to the assembly. They don't know what it means to be hunted. They don't know what it means to lose and still keep coming. They don't know what it means to fight for your children. Stone's voice lowered. But we do. The hall was completely still now. Amara Okonkwo leaned forward. General, are you saying victory is possible? Stone held her gaze. I'm saying survival is possible. Then he added, and I'm saying we can hurt them badly. That changed the air in the room, because until that moment, people had been arguing between surrender and extinction. Stone introduced a third idea, war, not as suicide, war as strategy. Director Voss stood up sharply. General, you're giving people false hope. Even if we fight dirty, we're still outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Stone nodded. Yes. Then he said, which is why we can't just fight dirty. He tapped the display again. A single word appeared: preparation. Stone took a slow breath. There is someone else who needs to speak, someone who has information that changes this entire debate. A side door opened. A woman walked in. She was small, wearing plain dark clothing. Her hair was pulled back. She looked like someone who belonged in a laboratory, not in the most important political chamber in human space. But when people recognized her, the whispers spread instantly. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, director of the Defense Innovation Directorate. The woman whose agency had built stealth tech, quantum networks, and half the tools that kept human civilization alive. Tanaka walked to the podium without ceremony. She looked out at the assembly, and for the first time, Lena Chen saw fear in a scientist's eyes. Not fear of death, fear of what she was about to reveal. "What I'm about to say is classified," Tanaka began. Her voice was soft, but it carried. "Until today, fewer than 100 people knew about this." The room held its breath. Tanaka activated her own display. The image that appeared was not a weapon, it was a map, and on it were dots, hundreds of them, spread through space like a net. "These," Tanaka said, "are Council observation drones." Gasps erupted. Tanaka continued, "80 years ago, we discovered the Council was watching us, recording everything, studying our fleets, studying our weapons, studying our tactics." She paused, letting that sink in. "So we created a program." She looked directly at Amara. "A program designed to develop technologies the Council could not see." The hall went silent in a different way now. Not fear, not anger, a stunned kind of awe. Stone crossed his arms, expression unreadable. Tanaka's voice grew steadier. "We cannot win a conventional war," she said. Then she said the sentence that made the entire hall feel like it shifted. "But we are not going to fight a conventional war." Tanaka leaned closer to the microphone and added quietly, "We built something the Council has never faced, and we've been testing it in secret." Then she looked at the leaders of Earth and asked, "Do you want to see what it can do?"
For a moment after Dr. Tanaka's words, no one spoke. Not because they didn't have questions, because they had too many. The entire hall felt like it was balancing on the edge of a knife. Secretary General Amara Okonkwo finally stood. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were not. "Doctor," she said, "what exactly did you build?" Tanaka didn't answer immediately. She tapped the display again, and the map of Council drones vanished. In its place appeared a single image, a small black object. It looked simple, almost harmless, like a piece of dark metal floating in a glass box. Tanaka spoke carefully. "This is a prototype unit of the Echo Drive." Some of the scientists in the room leaned forward. Others looked confused. General Stone's jaw tightened. Director Voss laughed once, sharp and bitter. "That's it?" he said. "That's the miracle? A box?" Tanaka turned her eyes toward him. They were calm, but cold. "It's not a miracle," she said. "It's a tool." She tapped the screen again. A simulation appeared. A Council warship floated in space. A human ship approached it, small, fragile-looking compared to the enemy. Then the human ship vanished. Not in a blur, not in a flash. It simply wasn't there anymore. The Council ship fired where it thought the human vessel was, but it hit nothing. Then the human ship reappeared behind it. One shot. The Council ship's engines went dead. The simulation ended. The hall didn't move. Marcus Hale, standing near the wall, whispered, "That's impossible." Tanaka nodded as if she agreed. "It should be," she said. "The Council's physics assumes reality is stable. Their entire empire is built on predictable rules. They control the galaxy because they believe they understand it." She paused. "We found the cracks." Director Voss stood slowly. "If you had this," he said, voice trembling with restrained fury, "why didn't you tell us? Why did you let humanity argue itself into panic while you hid this?" Tanaka's expression tightened. Because if the council knew, she said, they would have struck first. They would have erased us before we could finish. She looked around the hall. And because humans leak information, we always have. We talk, we brag, we fight each other, we post things, we break trust. We're human. A few people shifted uncomfortably because it was true. Tanaka continued, quieter now. So we kept it secret. We let the council believe we were predictable. General Stone stepped forward. We also needed time, not just to build weapons, but to build doctrine, to train crews, to prepare for a war we hoped would never happen. Senator Santos stared at the simulation like it was a holy vision. Can it win? She asked. Stone didn't answer with hope. He answered with honesty. It can help us survive, he said, and it can make them bleed. Amara looked down at the table in front of her, fingers pressed together. When she spoke, her voice was heavy. Bleed isn't victory. No, Stone said, but bleeding is how you make a giant feel pain. The hall fell silent again, because everyone understood what was happening now. The debate was no longer about pride, no longer about fear. It was about whether humanity was willing to do what war required. Tanaka changed the display one more time. Now it showed a list of projects. Most were labeled in code names. Project Ashfall, Project Mirrorhook, Project Widowmaker, Project Prometheus, Project Silence. Some names made people laugh nervously. Others looked sick. What are these? Amara asked. Tanaka's voice dropped. Options, she said. Then she added, and some of them are ugly. Director Voss looked like he wanted to vomit. You're talking about weapons that violate every treaty we've ever signed, he said. Stone nodded once. Yes. Voss's voice rose. So we become monsters to stop monsters? Santos snapped back immediately. We're already being threatened with extinction. What morality survives extinction? The argument erupted again, but it was different now. Before, the debate had been helpless. Now it was dangerous, because now humanity had claws. Ambassador Lena Chen watched all of it, feeling her stomach twist. She remembered Zolan's cold voice. We are not asking, we are informing. She remembered the way the council had looked at her, as if she was a bug that had wandered into the wrong room, and she felt something rise inside her. Not hatred, not revenge, something older, the refusal to be owned. Amara raised her hand. Enough, she said again. The room quieted. She looked across every representative, every colony leader, every military officer. We have 30 days, she said, and the council believes we will kneel. She turned to Lena Chen. Ambassador, she asked, if we choose defiance, are you willing to return to the council chamber and deliver our response? Lena's heart pounded. She knew what that meant. It meant she might not come back. It meant she would stand alone again in that chamber of monsters and tell them no. Lena straightened. Yes, she said. I'll go. Amara nodded. Then she looked at the assembly. We vote, she said. And the galaxy held its breath. The final vote count appeared on the screen, and for a moment Lena couldn't breathe, because the numbers were close, too close, and if just a few hands changed sides, humanity would kneel forever.
The final vote took 6 hours. Not because the process was slow, but because the room was full of trembling hands and broken voices. Representatives argued until their throats went raw. Colony leaders begged. Military commanders warned. Parents cried on live broadcasts. And through it all, the countdown stayed visible on every screen. 20 days remaining. 19 days remaining. 18 days remaining. Every hour felt like a nail being hammered into the future. Secretary General Amara Okonkwo insisted on a full recorded vote, no secret ballots, no hiding.
"If we choose surrender," she said, "history will know who signed the chains. If we choose war, history will know who lit the fire." One by one, the votes came in. Earth nations, Mars, Luna, the asteroid unions, the 12 colony systems. Each vote flashed on the main display in clean white text. Some voted for survival. Some voted for defiance. Some couldn't even speak their choice without shaking. Ambassador Lena Chen sat in her seat, hands folded tightly in her lap. She didn't move. She didn't blink much. She felt like she was watching the heart monitor of an entire species. Marcus Hale stood behind her, silent as stone. When the final tally appeared, the hall went completely still. Then the numbers locked. Accept the Council's demands, 473. Refuse the Council's demands, 480. For half a second, nobody understood what they were seeing. Then the room exploded. Not into chaos this time, into something wild and human. People stood, shouting, cheering, crying, hugging strangers. Some collapsed into their seats and sobbed as if they'd been holding their breath for a week. Senator Santos covered her face with her hands, shaking. Director Voss stared at the numbers like they were a death sentence. General Stone didn't celebrate. He just closed his eyes once, long and slow, as if he'd been carrying a weight that was finally real. Secretary General Okonkwo raised her hand. The hall quieted, but it took effort. It took time. When silence finally returned, Emara spoke. "The decision is made," she said. "Humanity refuses." The words hung in the air. Refuses. Not fights, not wins, not survives. Refuses. Emara turned toward General Stone. "Begin full mobilization," she ordered. "Evacuations first, defense second, offense only when we can afford it." Stone nodded. "Yes, Madam Secretary General." She turned toward Dr. Tanaka. "Activate your hidden programs," she said. "All of them." Tanaka's eyes hardened. "Yes." Then Emara looked at Lena. "Ambassador Chen," she said, voice softer now, "you will return to the Council and deliver our response." Lena stood. She didn't feel brave. She felt like she was walking toward a cliff. But she nodded anyway. "I will." 2 days later, Lena was back in the council chamber. The same shadowed ceiling, the same floating platforms, the same 17 species staring down at her like gods watching a tiny creature crawl. High Arbiter Zolan waited at the highest platform, glowing cold and steady. "Ambassador Chen," Zolan said, "you have returned with Earth's response." His voice carried through the chamber like thunder trapped in glass. "We are prepared to receive your submission." Lena stepped on to the central platform. She could feel her heartbeat in her throat. She could feel the eyes of 17 civilizations watching her, weighing her, judging her whether she would beg. She thought of New Jakarta, of Marcus's mother, of children born under alien skies, of billions of humans who had built homes where no human was ever meant to live. Then she thought of the Council's words. "We are not asking, we are informing." Something inside her went still, not numb, focused. Lena activated her holographic projector. Earth's flag appeared in the air, blue and green, bright against the darkness. She spoke clearly. "High Arbiter Zolan, members of the Galactic Council, I bring humanity's official response." The chamber was silent. Zolan's crystal body pulsed once. "Proceed." Lena took a breath, and then she said the 7 words that would change the galaxy forever. "Humanity rejects your decree and declares war." For a moment, nothing happened, as if the universe itself needed time to understand what it had just heard. Then the room exploded. Not into chaos this time, into something wild and human. People stood, shouting, cheering, crying, hugging strangers. Some collapsed into their seats and sobbed, as if they'd been holding their breath for a week. Senator Santos covered her face with her hands, shaking. Director Voss stared at the numbers like they were a death sentence. General Stone didn't celebrate. He just closed his eyes once, long and slow, as if he'd been carrying a weight that was finally real. Secretary General Okonkwo raised her hand. The hall quieted, but it took effort. It took time. When silence finally returned, Amara spoke. "The decision is made," she said. "Humanity refuses." The words hung in the air. Refuses. Not fights, not wins, not survives. Refuses. Amara turned toward General Stone. "Begin full mobilization," she ordered. "Evacuations first, defense second, offense only when we can afford it." Stone nodded. "Yes, Madam Secretary General." She turned toward Dr. Tanaka. "Activate your hidden programs," she said. "All of them." Tanaka's eyes hardened. "Yes." Then Amara looked at Lena. "Ambassador Chen," she said, voice softer now, "you will return to the council and deliver our response." Lena stood. She didn't feel brave. She felt like she was walking toward a cliff. But she nodded anyway. "I will." 2 days later, Lena was back in the council chamber. The same shadowed ceiling, the same floating platforms, the same 17 species staring down at her like gods watching a tiny creature crawl. High Arbiter Zolan waited at the highest platform, glowing cold and steady. "Ambassador Chen," Zolan said, "you have returned with Earth's response." His voice carried through the chamber like thunder trapped in glass. "We are prepared to receive your submission." Lena stepped on to the central platform. She could feel her heartbeat in her throat. She could feel the eyes of 17 civilizations watching her, weighing her, judging her whether she would beg. She thought of New Jakarta, of Marcus's mother, of children born under alien skies, of billions of humans who had built homes where no human was ever meant to live. Then she thought of the council's words. "We are not asking, we are informing." Something inside her went still. Not numb, focused. Lena activated her holographic projector. Earth's flag appeared in the air. Blue and green, bright against the darkness. She spoke clearly. "High Arbiter Zolan, members of the Galactic Council, I bring humanity's official response." The chamber was silent. Zolan's crystal body pulsed once. "Proceed." Lena took a breath, and then she said the 7 words that would change the galaxy forever. "Humanity rejects your decree and declares war." For a moment, nothing happened, as if the universe itself needed time to understand what it had just heard. Then the room exploded, not into chaos this time, into something wild and human. People stood, shouting, cheering, crying, hugging strangers. Some collapsed into their seats and sobbed, as if they'd been holding their breath for a week. Senator Santos covered her face with her hands, shaking. Director Voss stared at the numbers like they were a death sentence. General Stone didn't celebrate. He just closed his eyes once, long and slow, as if he'd been carrying a weight that was finally real. Secretary General Okonkwo raised her hand. The hall quieted, but it took effort. It took time. When silence finally returned, Amara spoke. "The decision is made," she said. "Humanity refuses." The words hung in the air. Refuses. Not fights, not wins, not survives. Refuses. Amara turned toward General Stone. "Begin full mobilization," she ordered. "Evacuations first, defense second, offense only when we can afford it." Stone nodded. "Yes, Madam Secretary General." She turned toward Dr. Tanaka. "Activate your hidden programs," she said. "All of them." Tanaka's eyes hardened. "Yes." Then Imara looked at Lena. Ambassador.
3 days after Lena Chen walked out of the council chamber, the Galactic Council made its answer. They didn't send a message. They didn't send negotiators. They sent fire. The Council's 3rd Expeditionary Fleet entered human space like a blade cutting into flesh. 800 warships, each one armed with weapons that could tear cities apart from orbit. To the Council, it wasn't even a war yet. It was punishment. Admiral Prethos commanded the fleet. He was Siraki, tall, feathered, sharp-eyed, old but not weak. He had spent a lifetime crushing rebellions and correcting younger species. He studied human files on the way in. He wasn't impressed. Humans were fast breeders, fast builders, fast fighters, but still young, still small, still doomed. His orders were simple: seize the colony world of New Jakarta, establish a forward base, and prepare the path for full conquest. Prethos expected resistance, a few desperate ships, a few brave speeches, then surrender. When the fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Jakarta system, the first report came in. "Admiral," an officer said, "no human ships detected." Prethos narrowed his eyes. "No ships at all?" "None, sir." Another officer added, "Orbital defense platforms are powered down. Stations appear abandoned." Prethos stared at the planet on the main screen. New Jakarta was beautiful. Green continents, deep oceans, cloud bands drifting like soft paint. A world worth fighting for. And yet, it was silent. His feathers lifted slightly at the back of his neck, a predator's instinct. "This is wrong," he muttered. The officer tried to reassure him. "Perhaps they fled, Admiral. The humans likely evacuated when they learned we were coming." Prethos considered that. Yes, humans were emotional creatures. They panicked, they ran. It would fit. Still, the silence felt too clean. "Proceed with caution," he ordered. "Launch scouts. Scan the surface. I want confirmation before landing." Scout ships descended. Minutes passed. Then the scout commander's voice returned, tense. "Admiral, the cities are empty." Prethos blinked. "Empty how?" "Streets deserted, homes abandoned, vehicles stopped in roads, food left on tables. It looks like they left quickly." Prethos let out a slow breath. So they ran. Cowards. His warriors would be disappointed. There would be no glory here. Still, the council needed a base, and New Jakarta was perfect. Order: begin landing operations, secure major cities, establish command zones, move ground forces in immediately. Hundreds of transport ships broke formation and descended. 50,000 council soldiers, Siraki infantry, Ktharvi shock troops, synthetic units, all pouring into empty human cities. Prethos watched from the bridge of his flagship, satisfied. Within hours, the council controlled 3 continents without firing a shot. He allowed himself a moment of pride. Then, the ground exploded. It happened everywhere at once, in every major city, in every district where council troops had gathered. The streets split open, buildings erupted upward like paper in a storm, and buried beneath human homes, beneath schools, hospitals, parks, antimatter charges ignited with the force of small suns. Prethos's view screen turned white, his sensors screamed, his officers shouted. Surface energy spikes, ground forces lost, transports vaporized, multiple detonation points, too many. The planet below bloomed with fire. City after city vanished into molten craters. In less than 30 seconds, 40,000 council soldiers were gone. Not defeated, erased. Prethos stood frozen, feathers trembling. "They destroyed their own cities," he whispered. His officer's voice shook. "Admiral, they destroyed their own world." Prethos's throat tightened. No species did this. No species sacrificed their own territory just to kill an enemy. That wasn't war. That was madness. That was... The tactical display screamed again. "Contacts," an officer yelled. "Multiple enemy signatures emerging across the system." Prethos turned sharply. Human ships appeared from nowhere. Not in one formation, not in a line. Small packs of 3 to 5 vessels, hidden behind moons, inside asteroid fields, buried in debris clouds. They swarmed like predators that had been waiting for the perfect moment. Prethos snapped back into command. "All ships, form battle lines," he ordered. "Focus fire." But the humans didn't care about battle lines. They didn't advance like a proper fleet. They struck. They vanished. They struck again from another angle. Their weapons were strange, missiles that curved like living things, kinetic rounds that hit with impossible speed, beams that sliced through shields like they weren't there. And then the humans did something even worse. They broadcast on open channels so every council ship could hear. A human voice, calm and mocking, echoed across the fleet. "Welcome to New Jakarta." Prethos's feathers rose in anger. Then the voice added, almost kindly, "You shouldn't have landed." Prethos felt a chill crawl through his chest, because for the first time in his long career, he realized something horrifying. The humans hadn't run. They had prepared. Prethos watched as a single small human ship slipped past his flagship's defenses. One missile launched, tiny, almost laughable. Then his engine section went dark, and the flagship began to drift. And in the silence, the human voice whispered, "Now the real lesson starts."
The first hour of battle was confusion. The second hour was terror. By the third hour, Admiral Prethos understood the truth. This wasn't a normal fight. It wasn't even a normal war. It was a hunt. His flagship, the Eternal Wing, drifted helplessly after the missile strike. The engines were dead, power rerouted to life support and shields. But even the shields flickered like they were unsure whether to keep trying. Prethos stood on the bridge, staring at the tactical display. Human ships danced across it like angry ghosts. They never stayed long enough to be targeted. They never attacked where the Council expected. They struck engines, communications, supply carriers. They hit the places that mattered. And then they vanished again. "Bring weapons online," Prethos snapped. "Rotate hull. All batteries ready." His officers tried, but every time the Council fired, the humans were gone. Not because they were faster in a straight line, because they moved like they already knew where the shots would land. It made no sense. And then Prethos realized what made it worse. The humans weren't fighting to defend New Jakarta. New Jakarta was already dead. They had sacrificed it. They were fighting to destroy the fleet, to send a message. Prethos forced himself to breathe. "We still outnumber them," he growled. "We still have superior firepower." But the numbers didn't matter when you couldn't land a hit. A Kathvani captain shouted over the comms. "They refuse honorable engagement. They hide like vermin." Prethos almost laughed, because the Council had been calling humans vermin for years. Now the vermin were biting out throats. Then the humans broadcast again. This time it wasn't mocking. It was worse. It was personal. A woman's voice came through the open channel, calm, clear, human. "You came here to make an example of us," she said, "so we'll return the favor." Prethos's officers looked around, uneasy, as if the voice had entered the bridge itself. The woman continued, "We evacuated every civilian weeks ago. We stripped the world. We left you only one thing: a grave."
Prethos slammed his talons into the command rail. "Cut the channel," he shouted. An officer tried, but the voice came back anyway. The humans weren't using standard communications. They were injecting their signal into the fleet's own systems, like a parasite. Prethos's throat tightened. For the first time in his life, he felt something close to fear. Not fear of dying, fear of being powerless. The battle didn't end that day. It didn't end the next day either. The Council fleet tried to retreat. Human ships harassed them. The Council fleet tried to regroup. Human ships broke their formations. The Council fleet tried to call for reinforcements. Human ships destroyed the communication relays. It was slow, cruel, 1,000 small cuts. The humans never gave them a clean fight. They gave them exhaustion. They gave them panic. They gave them shame. On day 3, a Council destroyer exploded when its own reactor overloaded. The human ships hadn't fired a shot. They had simply disabled the cooling system and left it drifting until it cooked itself to death. On day 5, a Siraki cruiser surrendered. Prethos couldn't believe it. A Council ship, built by a species that worshipped pride, broadcast a surrender signal. The human ships didn't destroy it. They boarded it, and the crew was taken alive. That was somehow more humiliating than death. By day 8, Prethos stopped thinking of the humans as prey. They were predators. Small predators, yes, but smart and angry and willing to bleed for every inch. By day 12, the Third Fleet was no longer a fleet. It was broken pieces, ships drifting, ships burning, ships fleeing in different directions like frightened animals. Prethos watched casualty numbers climb. 200 ships lost, then 300, then 500, and still the humans kept coming. Not in waves, in whispers, in sudden strikes, in nightmares. On day 15, Prethos received a message from Council Command. It was short. It wasn't comfort. It wasn't strategy. It was rage. Return with victory or do not return. Prethos stared at it for a long time. Then he laughed, bitter and hollow. Victory! There was no victory here. There was only survival, and even that was slipping away. On day 18, human Marines boarded the Eternal Wing. Prethos expected torture, execution, public humiliation. He expected the humans to spit on him, to scream, to punish him for New Jakarta. Instead, the Marines were quiet, professional, almost respectful. They disarmed his guards. They escorted him through his own corridors. They didn't beat him. They didn't even insult him. That was worse, because it meant the humans weren't fighting from blind rage. They were fighting with control. Prethos was placed in a clean cell aboard a human ship. Hours later, a human officer came to see him. She was young, with cold eyes and a calm voice. "You're going back to the Council," she said. Prethos stared. "Why?" "Because we want you to deliver a message." His feathers lifted. "What message?" The officer leaned closer, and her voice dropped. "Tell them the Third Fleet was only the beginning." Prethos swallowed. "And tell them," she added, "we learned how to kill gods." 2 days later, Prethos was released in a small shuttle, aimed back towards Council territory. As he left, he looked back at the stars, and he realized something that made his stomach turn. The humans had let him live because they wanted the Council to feel fear. The news reached the galaxy within a week. The Council tried to suppress it. They failed. Too many distress signals, too many survivors, too many whispers. And across the protectorate worlds, worlds that had lived in chains for thousands of years, people watched the reports with shaking hands. The Council had been beaten, not by an ancient empire, not by a rival superpower, by a young species that refused to kneel. Hope spread like fire, and hope was the most dangerous weapon of all. When High Arbiter Zolan received Prethos's report, he didn't rage, he didn't shout, he simply stared at the casualty numbers and whispered one word: impossible. Then he turned to the council and said, "Assemble everything. We end this quickly."
On Thesser Prime, the council chamber no longer felt like a throne room. It felt like a storm shelter. The 17 species gathered in emergency session, voices overlapping, anger and fear mixing into something ugly. The Kthvari demanded immediate retaliation. Burn Earth, they clicked. Crush the nest before it spreads. The Siraki screamed about honor. The humans fight like thieves. They must be punished. The Morpheans, once calm and quiet, shifted uneasily, their voices softer. This war is wrong, one of them said. This is not stability. This is slaughter. High Arbiter Zolan listened to them all. He did not interrupt. He did not shout. But the inner light of his crystalline body pulsed with a slow, cold rhythm. When the chamber finally quieted, Zolan spoke. "We underestimated humanity," he said. No one argued. Zolan continued. "They do not fight to defend territory. They fight to win. They sacrifice what we would never sacrifice. They use tactics we have not faced in 30,000 years." A Siraki representative snapped. "They have no honor." Zolan's light flickered. "And yet," he said calmly, "they defeated you." That shut the Siraki up. Zolan turned to the full council. "This war cannot be allowed to drag on. Every day it continues, the galaxy watches. Every protectorate species watches. They begin to wonder if the council is truly invincible." He paused. "And wonder is rebellion's first breath." A deep silence followed, because they all understood. The council's power was not only fleets and weapons, it was belief, fear, the idea that resistance was impossible. Humanity had cracked that belief in 18 days. Zolan lifted one crystalline arm. "We will assemble the largest fleet in council history," he announced. "Not hundreds, not thousands, tens of thousands." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Zolan's voice sharpened. "We will not send another expeditionary fleet. We will send a storm. We will take human space system by system. We will erase their worlds until their will collapses." The Kthvari clicked in approval. The Siraki flared their feathers. Even the Synth Collective remained silent, calculating. The council voted. The decision was unanimous. The crushing offensive began immediately. Across the galaxy, council fleets shifted course. Shipyards ran day and night. Supply convoys stretched across hyperspace lanes like rivers of steel. The council was preparing to drown humanity. And on Earth, General Elias Stone watched it all unfold. He stood in the command center of Fortress Sol, the massive defense station orbiting Earth. It was a city-sized structure of armor, rail cannons, and layered shields. It was humanity's heart and its shield. Stone didn't look afraid. He looked tired. Secretary General Amara Okonkwo entered the room, her steps quiet. She studied the tactical display. "So it's true," she said. "They're gathering everything." Stone nodded. "Our intelligence confirms it. 40,000 ships at minimum, possibly more." Amara exhaled. "That's more than all human vessels combined, including civilian ships." Stone's voice stayed flat. "Yes." Amara turned to him. "What do we do?" Stone didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled up a map of human space. 12 systems, now reduced to 7. He highlighted the remaining outer colonies, and then he marked several of them in red. Amara's eyes narrowed. "What is that?" Stone looked at her. "It's what we must sacrifice." The words hit Amara like a punch. "You're telling me we're going to abandon more worlds?" Stone didn't flinch. "I'm telling you, we don't have enough ships to defend everything.
If we spread out, we lose system after system until Earth is isolated and crushed. Amara stared at the red marks. Millions lived on those worlds. Families, hospitals, schools, entire cultures shaped by alien skies. "You're asking me to evacuate them," she said quietly. Stone nodded. "We evacuate civilians. We strip resources. We destroy infrastructure. We leave nothing behind but empty ground." Amara's hands trembled. That's what we did to New Jakarta." Stone's voice hardened. "Yes." Amara swallowed. "That world is a grave now." Stone's voice softened just slightly. "It was a choice, and it saved lives." Amara looked at the map again. "How many?" Stone answered without blinking. "Billions." The room felt suddenly too small. Amara turned away, staring out through the station's armored window at Earth, hanging in the darkness. "This is what war makes us," she whispered. Stone stood beside her. "No," he said, "this is what survival makes us." Amara closed her eyes. Then she opened them again. And Lena Chen realized something as she watched from the corner of the room. The Secretary General was not choosing war anymore. She was choosing what kind of pain humanity would accept. The pain of surrender or the pain of fighting. And there was no third option. Amara turned to Stone. "Begin evacuation protocols immediately." Stone nodded. "Yes." Amara's voice broke slightly. "And, General," Stone looked at her. "If we're doing this," she said, "then we don't just survive." Her eyes sharpened. "We make them regret ever touching us." Stone's expression didn't change, but something cold and determined moved behind his eyes. "We will," he said. And in that moment, the war changed again. Because humanity wasn't only reacting anymore. They were planning something bigger, something dangerous, something that would either save them or doom them. As evacuation fleets launched from the outer systems, Dr. Tanaka arrived at Fortress Seoul with a sealed data case. She placed it on the table in front of Stone and Okonkwo and said, "We have one chance to break their spine." Then she revealed the target. Nexus Station, the Council's shipyard heart.
The room went quiet the moment Dr. Tanaka said the words, Nexus Station. Even General Stone didn't speak right away. Secretary General Amara Okonkwo stared at the holographic image Tanaka projected into the air. The station was enormous, bigger than a moon, wrapped in armor plates and weapon arrays. Shipyards extended from it like metal ribs. Docking rings spun slowly around its core. It wasn't just a base, it was the Council's heart. Tanaka's voice was calm, but her eyes looked haunted. Nexus Station has been producing Council warships for 30,000 years, she said. Every fleet they've ever sent, every dreadnought, every carrier, it started there. Stone exhaled. "So, if we destroy it," he said, "they can't replace losses." Tanaka nodded. "Not quickly, not at the scale they're used to. It would slow them down, maybe for years, maybe for decades." Amara leaned forward. "And you think we can reach it?" Stone answered before Tanaka could. "We can reach it," he said. "The question is whether we survive long enough to strike." Tanaka activated the next display. A plan appeared: routes, diversion points, fleet movement predictions. The operation name flashed across the screen in bold. Operation Prometheus. Amara's mouth tightened. "Prometheus," she murmured, "the one who stole fire from the gods." Stone nodded once. "Exactly." The plan was brutal in its simplicity. Human fleets would launch attacks across 6 systems at once, small offensives, loud enough to look like desperation, strong enough to force the Council to respond. Those attacks weren't meant to win, they were meant to distract. Meanwhile, a strike force of 300 ships would slip away under stealth,
heading straight for Nexus Station. Amara's eyes narrowed. 300 ships? She asked. That's almost a third of our remaining combat fleet. Stone didn't sugarcoat it. Yes. Amara stared at the numbers. And if we lose them? Stone's voice stayed steady. Then we lose the war. The words sat in the air like smoke. Tanaka stepped forward. The ships aren't the weapon. What they carry is. She tapped the case she'd brought. The lid opened. Inside were rows of small black cylinders, each the size of a human forearm. Amara's gaze sharpened. What are those? Tanaka answered softly. Quantum disruption warheads. The room felt colder. Stone's jaw clenched. Amara didn't look away. I didn't authorize this. Tanaka replied. This is the result. Amara's voice was low. What do they do? Tanaka hesitated, and for the first time her calm slipped. They don't explode, not in the normal sense. She activated another simulation. A warhead struck an empty patch of space. Then, reality folded. A sphere of absolute nothingness bloomed outward. Matter vanished. Energy vanished. Even light disappeared for a moment. It looked like a hole punched into the universe. The sphere collapsed again, leaving behind emptiness. Tanaka's voice was tight. They disrupt local space-time. Inside the disruption zone, nothing survives. Amara whispered, You built a weapon that deletes space? Tanaka didn't deny it. Stone spoke quietly. The Council threatened to erase us. Tanaka built a way to erase them back. Amara stared at the warheads. How many? Tanaka answered, 40,000 drones. Each drone carries one warhead. Amara's eyes widened. 40,000? Tanaka nodded. They're not designed to survive. They're designed to overwhelm. Stone leaned forward. Nexus Station is the most heavily defended location in the galaxy. 4,000 ships guard it permanently, and more can arrive within hours. Amara looked at him. So, what are our odds? Stone didn't lie. 30%, maybe less. Amara let out a slow breath. A 30% chance to break the Council's spine. A 70% chance to throw away everything humanity had left. Amara sat back, eyes distant. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Amara said something Lena Chen never expected to hear from the most powerful human leader alive. What if we succeed and the galaxy becomes afraid of us? Stone answered quietly. It already is. Tanaka added, almost bitterly. They were afraid of us before we ever fired a shot. Amara's hands tightened into fists. She looked up at the hologram of Nexus Station again. Then she looked at Stone. Do it, she said. Yes, Madam Secretary General. Tanaka closed the case. Her voice was soft, almost sad. Once we do this, there is no going back. Amara's eyes hardened. We crossed no going back the day they demanded our colonies. Operation Prometheus launched 3 weeks later. Human fleets attacked Council positions across 6 systems at once, lighting up the galaxy with battles meant to look like panic. Council commanders responded exactly as predicted. They pulled ships away from Nexus Station. They sent reinforcements. They chased the noise. And in the shadow of that chaos, 300 human ships slipped into the dark. Lena Chen watched the strike force depart from Fortress Sol's observation deck. She felt pride. She felt fear. She felt something else, too, a strange kind of grief, because she knew the truth. Some of those ships would never return. Some of those crews would die without anyone ever knowing their names. But they were going anyway, because humanity didn't kneel. Humanity burned. As the strike force entered stealth, Commander Sarah Chen, Lena's granddaughter, received the final encrypted message from Earth. If you fail, We may not get a second chance. Sarah stared at the stars ahead and whispered, "Then we don't fail." Commander Sarah Chen had never seen anything so big. Nexus Station filled the view screen like a metal planet. It turned slowly in space, wrapped in glowing shield layers and surrounded by thousands of escort ships. Shipyards extended from its body like giant claws, each one holding half-built warships in its grip. It looked eternal. It looked unbeatable. Sarah stood on the bridge of the destroyer Prometheus, her hands clasped behind her back to stop them from shaking. She was 34. She had spent her life in the fleet. She had fought in the raids. She had watched friends die. She had watched colony worlds burn. But this was different. This was the heart of the monster. Around her, the strike force moved in silent formation, 300 ships, cloaked by Tanaka's stealth systems. They drifted through the shadows of asteroids and debris, hiding behind rocks like thieves creeping toward a palace. The Council didn't see them. Not yet. Sarah's second-in-command, Lieutenant Imani Brooks, leaned close. "Range?" she whispered. Sarah glanced at the tactical display. "Optimal," she said. Her throat felt dry. Somewhere far behind them, humanity's diversion fleets were still fighting, still dying, still screaming across open channels to keep the Council's attention away from this moment. All of it led here. Sarah tapped her comm panel. "All ships," she said. Her voice stayed steady through pure will. "Prepare drone launch. Target distribution pattern Alpha." No one answered with words. They answered with readiness. Sarah stared at the station again. She thought of her grandmother, Lena Chen, standing alone in the council chamber and declaring war. She thought of New Jakarta, still a molten scar in the system map. She thought of Marcus Hale's mother, refusing to leave her balcony until evacuation officers dragged her away. She swallowed. "Launch," Sarah ordered. 40,000 drones erupted into space. They poured out of human ships like a storm of black insects, each one small, fast, and carrying a quantum disruption warhead. For one perfect second, they flew in silence. Then the Council noticed. Alarms lit up across Nexus Station. Defense batteries turned. Escort ships surged forward, and space became violence. Point defense cannons opened fire in every direction, filling the void with beams and kinetic bursts. Drones exploded by the hundreds, then by the thousands. But there were too many. They came from every angle, above, below, through asteroid gaps, behind escort ships. The Council's defenses were powerful, but they were designed for fleets, not swarms, not chaos, not humans. Sarah watched drone counts drop. 40,000, 32,000, 27,000. Her stomach twisted. Come on, come on. The first drone reached its target. It struck a shield generator, and reality screamed. The quantum disruption warhead activated. For a moment, there was no explosion, only a sudden expanding sphere of darkness where light itself vanished. Then the sphere collapsed. The shield generator was gone. Not destroyed, gone. A hole had been punched into the universe. Sarah's breath caught. The Council's shield layer flickered. A second drone hit, then a third, then dozens. Shield nodes vanished like candles blown out. Nexus Station's protective shells shuddered, and for the first time in 30,000 years, it broke. "Shield's failing!" Lieutenant Brooks shouted. Sarah's eyes stayed locked on the screen. "Keep launching," she ordered. "All remaining drones, full saturation." The Council responded with fury. Escort ships turned toward the human strike force, finally spotting faint distortions in the stealth field. Council beam cannons lit up the darkness. Human ships exploded, one after another. Sarah watched the tactical map shrink as friendly icons vanished. 20 ships gone, 30, 50, 100. Her throat tightened, but she refused to look away. Because the drones were still moving, they poured through the broken shield gaps like water through a cracked dam. They struck shipyards, they struck reactor cores, they struck command towers. Each detonation erased another piece of Nexus Station. The massive structure began to come apart, not like a ship breaking, like a world being eaten. Council defenders panicked, ships collided, formations shattered, communication lines died. The perfect order the Council loved turned into screaming chaos. Sarah's ship shook as an energy blast grazed their hull. An officer shouted, "Port shields down!" Another screamed, "Multiple Council cruisers closing fast!" Sarah's voice stayed hard. "We don't fight them. We finish the mission." She watched as the final drone wave reached the station's core. Then, the heart of Nexus Station vanished. A spreading darkness bloomed outward, swallowing shipyards, power grids, and docking rings. 1,000 years of metal, 30,000 years of production, 50,000 years of Council dominance, all disappearing into quantum nothing. 6 hours after the first drone launched, Nexus Station was gone. The greatest fortress of Council power had not been defeated. It had been erased. Sarah stood frozen on the bridge, staring at the debris field where the station had been. Lieutenant Brooks whispered, "We did it." Sarah didn't smile. Her eyes burned. "Count losses," she ordered. An officer's voice came back, tight with grief. 112 ships destroyed. Sarah closed her eyes. 112 crews, thousands of lives, gone. But the mission was complete. She opened her eyes and looked at the expanding debris field again. "Grandmother, this one was for you." The strike force retreated under what remained of stealth. Council ships tried to pursue, but without Nexus Station's command network, without coordination, without a clear leader, the defenders were blind and furious and slow. Human ships slipped away into darkness, and across the galaxy, the news spread. The Council tried to deny it. They couldn't. Too many sensor records, too many surviving escort ships, too many minds whispering the same words. The humans destroyed Nexus. On Thesser Prime, High Arbiter Zolan read the report alone. He read it twice, then he sat in silence. For the first time in his long life, he felt something he had never allowed himself to feel. Not anger, not hatred, not pride. Fear. Because the humans hadn't just fought, they had struck the Council's heart, and they had proven something the galaxy had never believed possible. The gods could bleed. As Zolan stared into the darkness of his private chamber, a new message arrived, encrypted, human-coded, and impossible to ignore. It contained only 5 words. "We are coming for peace." Zolan's light flickered, because he realized peace might be the most dangerous threat of all.
The war did not end with Earth burning. It did not end with the Council collapsing in flames. It ended with something far stranger, a message. 3 days after Nexus Station vanished, a diplomatic channel that had been silent since Lena Chen's declaration of war suddenly came alive. The Galactic Council requested negotiations. When Secretary General Amara Okonkwo received the transmission, she read it twice. Then she sat back in her chair as if the air had been knocked out of her. General Stone stood beside her, arms crossed. "It could be a trap," he warned. Amara nodded slowly. "It could," she said, "but it could also be the first real chance to stop the dying." The casualty reports were endless. Millions dead. 4 colony worlds turned to radioactive wastelands. Entire fleets reduced to names on screens. Humanity had survived,
But it was scarred. Every system carried grief like a second atmosphere. Amara looked up at Stone. "We meet," she said, "but we meet on neutral ground." The location chosen was a dead moon orbiting a forgotten star. No cities, no stations, no advantage for either side. Just rock, silence, and cold starlight. Amara led the human delegation herself. She brought General Stone, she brought Dr. Tanaka, and she brought Ambassador Lena Chen, older now, thinner, but still standing straight. The council sent High Arbiter Zolan. He arrived alone, in a vessel barely larger than a shuttle. When Lena saw him step into the meeting chamber, she felt a strange twist in her chest. Zolan looked older. His crystalline glow was dimmer, less perfect, like the war had worn him down in ways no enemy ever had. The meeting room was simple: a long table, human-sized chairs, and a resting alcove for Zolan's form. No weapons, no guards inside, just two sides that had tried to erase each other. Amara sat at one end. Zolan positioned himself at the other. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Zolan broke the silence. "I have a question," he said, "one I have carried since the first day." Amara's eyes stayed steady. "Ask." Zolan's glow pulsed softly. "How did you know you could win?" Amara's face did not change. "We didn't," she said. The words landed like a shock. Zolan flickered. "Then why?" he asked. "Why choose war when the odds were impossible? Why refuse a protectorate and choose extinction?" Amara leaned forward. "Because what you offered wasn't survival. It was a cage." She paused. "You offered us safety in exchange for chains, but humans do not measure life only by breathing. We measure it by choice." General Stone spoke quietly. "You wanted us small," he said. "You wanted us limited. You wanted us to stop becoming." Dr. Tanaka added, voice tight with old anger, "And you threatened our children." Zolan fell silent. For the first time, Lena Chen saw something she never expected to see from him. Not superiority, not cold authority, regret. Zolan straightened. "Then let us speak of terms," he said. The negotiations lasted 7 days. There were arguments. There were moments when voices rose and the air felt ready to ignite again. But both sides had learned the cost of pride, and both sides were tired of burying the dead. In the end, the treaty contained 4 main points. First, humanity would be recognized as a sovereign species, not a protectorate. Second, the Council would withdraw from all occupied human worlds. Borders would return to pre-war lines. Third, humanity would be offered a seat on the Galactic Council as a full member. Fourth, technology would be shared both ways, carefully and with limits. Amara accepted, but she added her own demand. 3 protectorate species aided us, she said. They hid our refugees, they sabotaged our supply lines, they gave us intelligence. Zolan's glow tightened. They are under Council authority. Amara's eyes hardened. They earned freedom. The room went still, because everyone understood the weight of that demand. If the Council freed them, it would set a precedent. Other protectorates would ask the same. The Council's entire structure could begin to crack. Zolan hesitated. Then, slowly, he spoke. "I will advocate for their liberation. I cannot promise the Council will agree, but I will push for it." Amara nodded once. "That's enough, because if you don't, this treaty dies here." Zolan's glow pulsed, and Lena felt something shift in him. He wasn't used to being threatened, but he wasn't dealing with a species that obeyed anymore. The treaty was signed on the 8th day. Copies were transmitted across the galaxy. The war was officially over. As the delegations prepared to leave, Zolan asked Amara for a private moment. They stood on an observation deck overlooking dead space. Zolan's voice was quieter than Lena had ever heard it. For 50,000 years, the Council survived by eliminating threats early. We destroyed hundreds of civilizations. Amara did not speak. Zolan continued. When I watched humanity fight, I wondered, how many species like yours did we erase? How many could have changed the galaxy? His light dimmed. We called you dangerous, and we were right. But we were wrong about what that danger meant. Amara held his gaze. We're not here to replace you, she said. We're here to make sure no one ever lives in chains again. Zolan was silent. Then he said, almost like a confession, I believe the galaxy may need you. 1 year later, Lena Chen sat in the council chamber again. But this time she was not alone. A new platform floated at equal height with the oldest council species. It carried the human emblem, and beside it, 3 other platforms had been added, occupied by the liberated allies humanity had refused to abandon. High Arbiter Zolan called the session to order. For the first time in millennia, our council grows. Lena stood. She felt tears threaten her eyes, not because she was weak, because she was human. She thought of New Jakarta, of the burned worlds, of the names that would never be spoken again except in quiet rooms. She thought of her granddaughter, Sarah, still flying patrols in scarred space. She thought of Marcus Hale's mother, who returned to her ruined home and planted a tree anyway. Then Lena spoke. Humanity comes to this council not as conquerors and not as victims. She looked around at the alien faces. We come as a reminder that the future is not owned by the ancient, not owned by the powerful. It belongs to those who refuse to surrender their right to become. The chamber was silent. Then, slowly, one by one, the representatives responded, not with fear, not with obedience, with recognition, with something like respect. Outside the massive windows of Thesser Prime, the stars burned in eternal silence. They didn't care about treaties. They didn't care about grief. They didn't care about hope. But humanity did. And that was enough. Because humanity had not won the galaxy through conquest. Humanity had won it through refusal, through sacrifice, through the stubborn, impossible belief that no one, not even gods, had the right to decide their fate. And for the first time in 50,000 years, the galaxy began to change. The end. But as Lena sat back down, a quiet thought passed through her mind, one that felt like both a warning and a promise. This piece is the first chapter, and humanity has never been good at staying quiet. May this message strengthen your faith and renew your hope. Thank you for staying until the end. If this touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe to Astro Realms for more uplifting content. May God's blessings overflow in your life. See you soon.